Good Saturday morning. I'm sorry I had to cut off yesterday, but I had a call coming in and I had to take the call. So it's one of my colleagues, okay? Anyway, today's reading's Saturday. It's the continuation. It's actually Peter telling it is St. Paul in Rome, in the prison in Rome, explaining how he got there and all the rest. And that he actually, under Roman law, even though he was imprisoned, he was free. People came and went, and he was able to proclaim the gospel. It's interesting. Paul takes advantage. He takes advantage of the law, the benefits that came from the lawfulness. He was better off in Rome, in prison, than he was outside, because he came under the protection of the law. Seeing that, and in that sense, I think the church sometimes, it's interesting. I don't know, I may be contradicting myself all over the place here. I'm not very consistent this morning. I apologize. I'm kind of distracted. But the thing is, the church is within a culture, but she can be critical of her culture. She's within the law, but can be critical of it. I gave the example the other day. Sure. I think she's a very important voice with regard to the constitutionality of the protection of human life, of all forms of human life, you see, from the unborn to the elderly. Okay? She has an immoral obligation, a theological immoral obligation to speak to the dignity of human beings. See? She's not free not to do that. And yet, in many instances, the law and the state supports her on that matter. In other places, she does not. Maybe not by actively doing something wrong, but perhaps by permitting an evil, you see? By permitting an evil, see? Where it should protect the innocent, in the sense it looks the other way and allows the innocent to suffer. I think that's your abortion issue, to be honest about it, okay? So in a sense that the church always is within a culture, and she's also of a culture, but times critical of a culture, of a state, or a set of laws, etc. I think that's extremely important to understand. There's a tension always within the church, a tension within the church within the world. She's both of it and not. She's of the world, but not of the world. She's in the world and not of the world. Boy, am I having a tough time this morning, and I apologize for it. I'm sorry. Just kind of scattered. My thinking is just, I don't know, just having a funny morning, that's all. Kind of, I don't know. I'm just conscious of the church. I'm conscious of the church in the world. I'm conscious of I think it's going to be the great struggle in the next 50 years, 100 years of the church. I think in the West, as she has diminished so dramatically in Europe, her position in America is going to be very controversial. Depending on how various laws and constitutional issues are decided, will pit the church perhaps against it or in support of it. We'll see. But our younger generations are going to face choices with regard to their faith and their membership within the church, and their active membership within the church, and their active membership with the broader society. There can be a tremendous tension in there. Right? I wonder sometimes back now, 75 years ago, maybe in the 30s, and the rise of Nazism, National Socialism in Germany, where I'm not talking the official church, whether Protestant or Christian or Catholic, whatever it may be, but where was the average Christian and Catholic? How did they deal with it, and how did they struggle with these issues? I don't know. But I kind of can see how you could be torn in between fidelity to the state, especially if it's in a state that is rectifying at certain points some injustices, whatever. Nazism arose because of the injustices done to Germany at the Versailles Treaty. So there's an element of legitimacy there, okay? But at a hell of a cost. You see, you began to get inklings of that. More than inklings, Hitler's anti-Semitism was fierce from the start, okay? What do you do with that, you see? See, the state very often, while it gives with its left hand, it takes back with its right, or put it the other way around. See, and what does the Christian do in a society like that, where it sees a perceived good, but at the same time recognizes that there may be contained with even a procurement of that good and evil? See, so defending a set of rights, one may sacrifice other forms of rights. Right? That's where it's tricky. We saw it in Europe. We saw it in Nazi Germany, but we saw it throughout Europe. And I think in our own country, we face that in the future. It's now still relatively comfortable, morally speaking, to be a Christian in America. But I wonder down the road, or to be a believing Jew or a believing Muslim. But I wonder down the road, as we secularize more and more of our institutions, our art, our language, as we preclude language, religious language, we exclude it from political discourse, as we more and more delimit our discourse. And we've already removed our religious education, religious language from our public schools. That wasn't the case when I was a boy in public schools. We said the Our Father every morning. Huh? Okay. What happens when you radically secularize education, art, politics, and you preclude even religious discourse or religious language? As you radically secularize in the name of plurality and pluralism or diversity, you end up undercutting a crucial element in your culture, the moral foundations of your culture. You could say we should discover those through reason. That's just not, it's okay in the classroom, you might say in the university, you can talk till the cows come home. But the bottom line is a moral order is as much foundationally cultural and emotional as it is intellectual. It needs intellectuality to keep it from fanaticism, but at the same time, there has to be the affective side of it, or it's mute, it's harmless. It's a morality without moral force. It's a cliched morality rather than a forceful morality. We face that. We face that as a nation. Are we a moral nation or not? And to what extent is our morality deep? Or have we politicized it so much that we have taken morality and separated it from political discourse? Or we have so politicalized the fundamental human rights that it's now political matter rather than a moral matter, undergirding our Constitution and undergirding our political discourse. When you eliminate it, that's a dangerous precedent. When I see that, I look at history as a very important teacher, because if it doesn't tell you which way to go, it tells you which way not to go. We've been there we've been there before, and we see what happens. It's not a personal worry on my part because I'll be in the ground. But what's going to happen for our children and our grandchildren? What world are we bequeathing to them? I don't know. In one way, it's a world of great opportunity, especially, I think, for minorities and for women, especially. And finally, there's parity there in every phase of life, okay? But undergirding that tremendous evolution in human rights, I worry about the foundations to it. You erode those foundations. It could be a house built on sand. The tides come when times get rough. It could collapse. Moral foundations to the political order are crucial to the flourishing and even the survivability of a political order. And that's the truth. Might does not make right. It just doesn't. History is a frightening picture there. And I do worry. I worry philosophically, not personally because I'll be dead. It's not personal, where I'm going to suffer from it. I'm 80 years old. Party's over for me. But what about our children and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren? What have we bequeathed them? I hope it's a world in which our human rights are flourishing and are advanced, both politically and morally, in such a manner that it is a true flourishing of society. Aristotle said you cannot live a virtuous life without a virtuous society. He was right. Our danger now is that we don't have a virtuous society. And in that case, it's going to become very difficult to be virtuous. It may require heroism instead. Matters of faith, but even basic morality. That's the truth. We don't live in a brave new world. We run in a scary new world because we're going to have to choose whether we're going to be moral or not. Is our society going to be a moral virtuous society or not? And history has taught us when it is not morally founded and deeply morally founded in a virtue, those societies collapse. And they do. Historically, they do. We can. I hope we won't.